Hello. In this video, I would like to introduce some postural and therapeutic exercises I give to almost all my patients when we're exploring how to breathe. You can do all the mindfulness and breath pacing exercises you like, but if your posture is compromised, this will affect your ability to breathe diaphragmatically. So there's several exercises I like to give almost all patients. Before we begin, let's notice how we're breathing and our posture. So notice how you're sitting. I'm sitting here on the floor in a cross-legged position. You can also be sitting in a chair. So let me do that for just a moment and show you. I invite you to first notice how you really would sit in a chair. So not knowing that you're about to do your exercises, but if you were going to sit in the chair the way you usually do you cross your legs? Is your tailbone tucked under? Are you slouching forward? If you're working at your desk, how are you sitting? So take a moment to notice and really get into the posture you normally sit in. As you can see, I have my assistants with me who will be affecting my posture as well. And this is Jake. So if I were to find the posture that I'm traditionally sitting in, I want you to find that. Sit in that posture for a moment. And then let's notice our breathing. So you can also, in this posture, if it's possible, you can place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Turn and face the camera. But you can close your eyes for a moment. And as you sit in this posture, with one hand on your chest and one on your belly, notice what moves first. Where does the breath begin? Where is it? Is it under either of your hands or is it in between somewhere? Notice what moves first. And simultaneously, notice what moves most. It might not be the place that initiates the movement. So perhaps it's under one hand or the other. You might notice that there's no particular pattern. What moves first and what moves most? Then turn your attention to the rate of inhale and exhale. Is one longer? Is one shorter? So notice the rate of inhale compared to the rate of exhale. Again, there might be no pattern. Now turn to the volume. What's the depth, meaning volume, of the inhale, the depth of the exhale? Are they equal or do they differ? So rate of inhale, rate of exhale, depth of inhale, depth of exhale. And again, notice what moves first and what moves most. You might find a pattern, you might not. And notice if there's any gaps or pauses in this breath. And a gap happens midstream, as if it's a catch. And a pause happens at the end of inhale or end of exhale. You might notice that every third breath, there's a pause. You might notice a pattern of every few breaths, there's a sigh, which would be a longer exhale with a longer volume. Or you might notice no pattern at all. And notice the emotional quality to this and the energetic quality. Is it an effort to breathe? Does it just smoothly transition from the in to the out? Does it come in and out on its own? Or does there seem to be a little bit of a struggle? Does it feel like a calm breath, a relaxed breath, an anxious breath, a worried breath? Notice. And now, what I'd like you to do is scan your body from the feet all the way to the shoulders. Notice if there's any muscular contraction, muscular effort, or postural issues that are impacting the free-flowing breath. So here you can now adjust your posture. Adjust your posture in whatever way you feel like would allow the breath to come in effortlessly, easily, and diaphragmatically. So take a moment and notice what you observed. So we're going to do some therapeutic exercises, and I just want to adjust posture first. I'll start on the chair, and then I will move to the floor. If sitting in the chair, one of the most dysfunctional and problematic things is to sit back against the chair. What this often does is causes us to tuck our tailbone under. So immediately we're tilting the pelvis. Then our spine starts to decompensate. Whenever possible, see if you can sit up at the edge of your chair. And then notice your pelvis. Is it tilting forward? Is it tilting back? Is it tilting from one side to the other? Just the pelvis. This is going to require that our knees are lower than our hips. If your knees are higher than your hips, we often either tilt forward or we tilt back. So feet are flat on the floor and they're not crossed. So our ankles aren't crossed and our hips aren't crossed. The minute I cross my hips, I tilt my pelvis. And you can see this. I tilt my pelvis to one side. Because the eyes want to be level, I start to contort my body. So, knees lower than hips, pelvis maybe slightly tilted forward, but not much. So again, rock your pelvis front and back, side to side, until you feel like your pelvis, if it's a bowl, is not spilling forward or back. Now notice what happens to your spine. Can it just elongate out of your pelvis? And notice where your shoulders are. When we have our hands forward all the time, or we're looking at our phones, we pull our head forward, our shoulders forward, our elbows forward, and we start to contract. Just imagine how that is to breathe right now. So can you let your collarbones be wide, your shoulders be open, your shoulders over your hips, your ribs aren't jutted forward, but coming back, and your head and your ears are over your shoulders. This might feel like a challenge for you. So as I sit here, the chair is already tilted slightly, but can I even my pelvis? Can I get my shoulders back? Can I get my head back? So I'm going to move to the floor. Now when I'm seated on the floor, my legs are crossed. And in this position, I am opening up the pelvic bowl. And so that opens the pelvis. When the legs are crossed and the thighs are engaged, it often tightens some of the perineum muscles, which prevent the diaphragm from descending fully because of a reflex action. So I'm opening the pelvis and I'm not tilting forward or tilting back. I let my collarbones be wide. So one thing to do is just rock the pelvis forward and back and forward and back, side to side, opening that up and loosening that. Can you tilt the pelvis forward and back? And we will talk about that with an exercise called the cat-cow. Now I'm going to go top down. I invite you to take your head and just look down. In fact, you can even roll your shoulders a little bit. And now take a breath in. Notice the ease or difficulty with that. Now, sitting up, bringing your chin back, ears almost over the shoulders wide. Notice how it is to breathe in. Look down. Look up. Hopefully you feel that as your head is aligned, the breath flows in evenly, easy, without any constriction. And how often in our day are we sitting like this? Notice the ease of the breath. This is a problem for us when we're always in this posture because the sternocleidomastoid, the muscle that comes from the mastoid process behind the ear, down across to the collarbone, the clavicle, down to the sternum, the sternocleidomastoid, gets tight. Its job is to turn our head and pull our head forward. If you ever are pulling your head back like this and you find that your chin is coming up, it's because it's shortening that muscle. If you find that it's always having your chin forward, sternocleidomastoid is tight, and you can see it on a lot of people. We do not want to use this muscle to raise the collarbones to breathe. That's not the most efficient. So the first thing I'd like to have you do is called a trigger point release. Turning your head to one side just a bit and using the thumb and the index finger of the same side of the muscle, you're just going to take the edges of it on both sides and squeeze. I'm not squeezing gently. And we squeeze. And in trigger point work, we hold it for about 5 to 7 seconds. And you may feel several things. You might feel this radiate to different parts of the head, behind the other eye or that eye. You might feel it on the temples, down the jaw. You might feel it in the back of the head. Or you might feel a classic vasovagal reaction where you start to get a little nauseous or dizzy. This means these muscles are excessively tight. I have several patients who, when they do this daily, find that they don't get headaches or even have nausea as much or dizziness. So we squeeze. Now I'm just going down the muscle and I'm holding for 5 to 7 seconds and releasing, and I'm remembering to breathe the whole time. The sternocleidomastoid muscle is innervated by cranial nerve 11, the accessory muscle, and this is related to the vagus. And though it's not part of this video, I will talk elsewhere about how the cranial nerves 5, 7, 9, and 11 are related to the vagus, and if those are not functioning properly, can impact deleteriously our breath. So make sure you do the other side. And I'm recommending this every day before you do your breath work. I'm recommending this every day, several times a day, for anyone who finds that they work at a computer a lot or are on their phone a lot. Surprisingly, releasing this muscle alone can create a lot of health benefits. And you might not feel some spots. You might not know which of these. Oh, that one does, but the other ones don't. That's okay. Play with it. Another trigger point release exercise for the trapezius, which is also innervated by cranial nerve 11, is to take your fingers, your index and your middle finger and your ring finger, and bring it to the opposite shoulder, right over the top of the trap and right in the middle. Oh, you might find it. You might find all of those really tight. And just press into that. And you might have a similar reaction. Right now, as I'm pressing here, I can feel it go right up to this top of my head on the same side. Remember to breathe. And you can press along that on both sides. Now, a stretch for this sternocleidomastoid is to take your opposite hand on the collarbone, and you just press the collarbone down. Turn your head slightly to the side, about 30 degrees, and then drop it back. Now you can play with your nose position just till you feel that stretch. Don't collapse, sit up, lean back, breathe. And you can hold this for about 20 seconds. Always ensure that you do both sides. So turning your head 30 degrees, dropping the head back, pulling the collarbone down, but not collapsing. Now, let's start working our shoulders. First, take your arms out to the side. When you take your arms out to the side, turn your palms up and feel that movement. As you turn your palms up, feel how your shoulders are opening. There's a tendency here to want to jut your ribs forward, but see if you can just bring your ribs back slightly. Notice your head wanting to come forward, bring it back. Now when you bring it back, don't let the chin drift to the sky. So I'm opening my shoulders, and right now I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades together a little bit. It's a rhomboid squeeze. The rhomboids are the muscles between the shoulder blades, and I squeeze them together. And I hold and I breathe. Now when I do this, you might notice where the breath goes, what breathes first and what breathes most. And then release. And then I squeeze the shoulder blades together. I'm opening the palms up, reaching through the fingers. And release. And then just notice, even that, does that help sitting up? To do shoulder rolls, I take the arms out. The fingers are in a hitchhiker position with the thumbs pointing forward. I imagine reaching the knuckles to the wall. Drop my shoulders, because there's a tendency to want to bring your shoulders up by your ears. Drop your shoulders. And then as you inhale, you're going to come forward, up, and then as you exhale, you're going to go back and down. Imagine your shoulder blades sliding down your back. And I'm having problems because my assistant is right in the way on my left arm. But inhaling up and rolling back, exhaling. Inhaling up, and I would recommend doing 20 of these slowly. You're reaching as if someone's grabbing your wrists, or you're reaching your knuckles to the wall, and it's coming up and down, and feel your shoulders and your shoulder blades sliding down your back. Inhaling as you come up and forward and up, and exhaling as you go back and down. Then flip the arms over, thumbs pointing back. Inhale as you go back and up, and exhaling as you go down and forward. Someone doesn't want to let me move my arms. So 20 of these in both directions, and then pause. Open your hands fully, palms up, not jutting too far, and then bring them down. And just rest your hands in your lap. See if you can bring your elbows now right under your arm, your shoulders. You can even place your hands right here again. And I'm exaggerating the sound of my breath a little bit, but I really recommend that you don't even do ujjayi breathing if you know yoga breathing. Nice and quiet. And notice what changed. Notice if it's easier to sit up. You can always do the rhomboid squeeze by keeping your arms hanging if you're in a chair, or your elbows right underneath your shoulders, and just bring the shoulder blades together. Don't jut your chin forward. Don't arch your ribs. Shoulder blades together. Squeeze. And release. Hold that for about 15 seconds, inhaling and exhaling as you're doing that, and then just release. Feel what that's like. Shake out those shoulders. One way to breathe diaphragmatically, and there's two basic ways to breathe diaphragmatically, is where you're looking up the chest and the diaphragm simply descends into the abdomen. So the diaphragm is a dome-shaped wall muscle that's right under your rib cage, like this, and when it's innervated by the phrenic nerve, it will flatten out. The goal of the diaphragm is to expand the rib cage in whatever way it can, so that your rib cage expands and the lungs are attached to the rib cage, so that as the rib cage moves, the lungs stretch. The volume in the lungs increases, and so the air rushes in. And then when the diaphragm simply relaxes, it recoils back and it causes the rib cage to contract, and the air gets pushed out passively. So there doesn't need to be any effort. So one way to breathe diaphragmatically is where we lock up the chest and the diaphragm, the top of the diaphragm muscle, descends down into the abdomen. So the attachments of the diaphragm, which are along the ribs and in the lumbar spine, stay where they are, and the top just goes down into the abdominal cavity, pushing the abdomen out. One way to do this is called arms overhead. We interlace our fingers, bring our arms up. Now notice, you can bring your shoulders up, but you can drop your shoulders down. Roll that back. You don't want to jut your ribs forward, and you don't want to bring your head forward either. So dropping the shoulders. In fact, you can raise the shoulders up and then drop them. Relax your head and breathe. And in this position, you should feel the belly move. Not the top of the chest. So if you're having trouble breathing diaphragmatically or feeling the belly move, I recommend doing this for about 7 breaths. Let the belly move and then slowly lower the arms after 7 breaths. And then see if you can come back to just letting the belly move. If you begin to lose that connection, that feeling, and we're going for the somatic, visceral feeling of this breath, bring the arms overhead again. Drop the shoulders, let the collarbones be wide, bring the head back, the chin back, don't arch your ribs, and feel the breath. Another way to lock this up is with a seated or standing yoga mudra. In a yoga mudra, and I'll do this on my knees, facing away. All we're going to do is just bring our hands behind us. Now, if you're on a chair, you can simply hold the edge of the chair. Bring your hands behind you. This might be enough for you. You can always just have your hands here. We're rolling the shoulders back. Do not jut the ribs far forward, and do not bring the head forward. We're just going to bring it back. So I'm going to bring here. Palms can touch. You can start to straighten the arms. Notice my head wants to go forward. I want to do this. Bring your head back and reach. Don't arch too much. So this is a tricky one. You can always have a strap to hold on to, or as I said, you could just be reaching behind you in your chair. Roll the shoulders back is what we're trying to do. We're elongating the collarbones. Don't bring the head forward. The head's going to come a little bit forward. See if you can bring it back. And then breathe. You should feel the breath and the movement in the belly. And I recommend holding for 15 to 20 seconds and doing that a few times. Now, if I'm sitting on the floor, I can also just reach behind me, roll my shoulders back, bring my head back, and breathe. And I can feel that in the front of my abdomen. Now, a lot of times people are saying they can't really feel this part move. They're having a hard time feeling the abdomen, and they want to get some movement of the belly. So I talk about the abdominal pump. For some people, this is so easy to do. For others, it's not. And they feel a little bit discoordinated. So, uncoordinated, discoordinated. What you're going to do is we're going to take a breath in and hold it. And then simply pump the abdomen in and out. And can you make it rhythmic? Can you make it easy and even? Many people who feel uncoordinated doing this find that their whole body starts to move and they can't get it. So we take a breath in, hold it, pump, or you can also take a breath out and pump. The goal of this is to just get the diaphragm and the abdomen to begin to move and feel that it's easy and free and no tension, to release the tension. So we can do about 20 of these abdominal pumps and then release. So I'm going to move the chair for a moment. Next exercise is to also open more of this rib cage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my arms out to the side, palms up first. And then I'm going to inhale, and as I exhale, I'm going to reach over to my right, your left. And I can do this in a chair. Inhale, and then I'm going to exhale, go over to the left, your right. And then just do that. Inhale to center, exhale out to the side, trying to keep both hips down. And I can do this in a chair, as I said. Now I'm going to go over to this side, drop this hand. I could reach for the bottom of the chair if I'd like. Drop the shoulder, reach this hand up skyward, and then go over. Now as I go over, I'm making a C shape on this side of the ribs. And then I can bring this hand straight to these ribs. Drop your head. Breathe and feel this side of the ribs expand. Drop your head. Imagine taking that shoulder behind you. Then reach that arm back up. Come on up. And then we're going to go to the other side. So exhale over to the left, my left, your right. Inhale back to center. Exhale over to the right or left. Over. Try to keep both hips down as you're doing that. And then as you come over, drop that hand. Drop that shoulder. Reach the opposite hand up. Then come over. You can then take your fingers to the ribs. Imagine taking that shoulder open. Head hangs. Breathing into these ribs. And do that and hold this for 30 seconds or so. And then reach back up. Palms up. Feel that opening of the shoulders. And down. So I said the one way to breathe diaphragmatically is where the central tendon, that's the top of the diaphragm, moves into the abdominal cavity, but the attachments stay in place. Another way to breathe diaphragmatically is where the central tendon, the top of the diaphragm, stays in place and the attachments move. And to do that, we're going to take our hands around both sides of the rib cage, up the lower part of my rib cage. Now, there's a tendency to roll forward, especially if your shoulders come in a lot. Roll the shoulders back. Let the head come back. Don't jut the ribs forward. Drop your shoulders. Squeeze. And then with the breath in, and I'm going to make a sound, of course, push your ribs into your hands. And I'm squeezing. I'm really putting a lot of pressure here. I'm dropping my shoulders as much as possible. And can you feel it? And because there's different branches of the phrenic nerve, they innervate different parts of the diaphragm, you can always just breathe into one side. It's harder to do. And then both sides. Like the arms overhead, I recommend doing 7 of these. This is a harder one to coordinate. Doing 7 of these, then lowering the hands. Seeing if you can keep that going. And if you lose it, bring it back here. So you can actually get the mastery of this type of breathing where the central tendon is fixed and the attachments are mobile and they move. As I said, this is a harder one to do. Sitting back up again. The next exercise I'd like to talk about is the seated cat-cow. You can do the cat-cow on the floor, or you can also do it seated in a chair. And so I'm going to bring my chair over. And so for those of you who find it harder to go to the ground, that's okay. You don't need to. In the seated cat-cow, notice where the knees are. What we're going to be doing, we're going to be tilting from the hips. The pelvis is going to come forward. I'm going to place my hands on my knees. Now, this is all movement from the pelvis. I'm going to tilt the tailbone under. Now notice, I'm trying to keep everything in alignment as I'm leaning forward. So I'm in as much of a straight line as possible. I'm going to tuck under, and that's going to start the movement. I tuck under So my head doesn't move yet. And that starts to translate to a curve of the spine. And I'm going to imagine pressing my sternum through my shoulder blades and my head comes down. I'm exhaling on this position. Now as I come forward, I'm going to start in the tailbone again. I'm going to press the tailbone forward. My head is down, my shoulders are down, and the movement comes from the tailbone. So now when the low back starts to arch, then it can translate. It can move up, up, and I just look forward. And that's on an inhale. So it's going to be an exhale, tuck under. Notice that starts at the tailbone, then and only then can I bring my head forward. And then I start at the tailbone. And it comes up the low back, and imagine vertebra by vertebra arching. Shoulder blades come together and I just look forward. And starting at the tailbone. You might find areas where the whole spine goes as in a one big chunk. So it might feel like 4 vertebrae all go in the same time, or you don't feel like you have flexibility of the spine. This is a great way to start to get some flexibility of the spine. So notice it's a big C shape here, the other way, and then I'm going to do the opposite direction, exhaling. And so I recommend 20 of these in each direction. Wake up the spine, and then you simply sit up and notice what that is like. I believe we should be doing, I know I said there should be doing these several times a day to help with our posture, because then we can breathe in a more upright, easy, and efficient way. So I want to show you a few exercises against the wall. So I'll do that in a second. So there's 2 exercises I wanted to show you against the wall. The first is called arms up against the wall. So turning to the side, you want your feet about 3 to 6 inches away from the wall. And then you're going to walk your arm up the wall. Now, there's a tendency, as we've talked about in other exercises, to jut your head forward, to bring the opposite shoulder forward. What we want to do is make the collarbones wide. And there's also a tendency to arch the back. You want to tuck the tailbone down, bring the ribs back. You want the arms just to hang down the side. And so once you get in this alignment, and I cannot see myself, you're going to press your top arm into the wall as if you're pushing it through the wall. So you're going to push against the wall with about 25% of your effort. The minute many people start pushing, they start to bring their shoulder forward, which is what I was doing, or their head forward. So just press for about 15 seconds. We're going to press for 15 seconds, about 25% of our effort. Let this arm relax. Then after 15 seconds, what we're going to do is we're going to stop pressing and just drop into the wall. You're opening up that armpit. Don't bring that head forward, and just reach into the wall. Hold this for about 20 seconds. Then come back up, and then you're going to do the same thing again. You're going to press into the wall, press into the wall, press into the wall for about 15 seconds, then drop, breathing the whole time. Then as you're done with that, you walk away from the wall and see what happens to your arm. What often happens is you'll feel this arm that was up against the wall opening. The thumb will come more forward, where the other hand, you may feel the back of the hand. And then just remember to repeat that on both sides. Many times when I teach this, I only show one side and I'm always lopsided. So that's the first exercise. The second exercise is another rhomboid squeeze. You're going to come against the wall, and then you're going to take your feet out about 3 to 6 inches. Feet parallel and hip width apart. Bring your butt against the wall, your shoulders against the wall, and your head against the wall. Now remember, because of the sternocleidomastoid, many times the chin comes up. Bring the chin down, elongate the neck. Now, bring your shoulders back and bring your ribs back. That's already going to start to feel an engagement in the front of your body. And that's a stretch unto itself. Remember to breathe. Next, you're going to bring your wrists up, not 90 degrees, about 45. And the back of the hands against the wall. The minute you do this, many people start to arch their ribs. You want to bring the ribs back, chin down. This is already a stretch. Now, just like the arm up against the wall, pressing into the wall with 25% effort with your wrists. So you press, press, press. Keep those ribs from going forward, bring them back, press, and then release. So about 15 seconds. Then do it again. Rest for 20 seconds in between. Bring them back up. Press, 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 breathing. And release. And then walk away from the wall. So these are just a few of the functional and postural exercises I give almost everyone when I'm teaching them functional breathing. So try these for a few weeks and let me know what happens. Take care and go gently, knowing your goodness.